Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Naomi O'Neill. We are honoured to acknowledge Mr. John King, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL and Services Club Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant David Corry Ardis. David Ardis was born on the 3rd of February 1916 in Belfast, Northern Ireland, to David and Catherine Ardis. He had a sister, Kathleen, and the family immigrated to Australia when David was a young man, settling in the Melbourne suburb of Footscray. Ardis attended Hyde Street Central School and Williamstown High School. He was a very good student and enjoyed cricket, tennis, and table tennis. Upon leaving school, he studied bookkeeping and accountancy at Footscray Technical Night School and took a correspondence course in accountancy. He found work as a clerk and then as a bookkeeper and then as a chief ledger keeper. On the 21st of October 1939, Ardis married Mavis Bird. 1.5 years later, the couple had a daughter, Pamela. Ardis enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force on the 15th of May 1942 at the age of 26. He was trained as a navigator and embarked from Melbourne for overseas service on the 3rd of July 1943, arriving in Canada some weeks later. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,000 RAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, gunners and engineers who joined Australian and British squadrons in Britain throughout the course of the war. After months of training, Ardis received his navigator's badge and was made a sergeant in June 1943. He left Canada that October, arriving in the UK. Further training followed, and in the December, he was promoted to flight sergeant. On the 18th of September 1944, Ardis was posted to number 467 Squadron RAF. As part of Bomber Command, the squadron flew the 4th engined Avro Lancaster heavy bomber. Starting on the 20th of September, Bomber Command made a series of attacks against enemy-occupied defences in and around Calais, on the coast of France. On the afternoon of the 24th, Ardis was a navigator of Lancaster Lima Mike 636 as it set off for Calais from the squadron's base in Waddington, England. Bad weather meant that many of the aircraft were recalled, but this message was not received by all. Those who continued attempted to bomb the target from lower altitudes, but heavy enemy fire ensued, and number 467 Squadron lost 2 aircraft to enemy fire. Ardis's Lancaster crash-landed at around 9 p.m. On board were Australians Flying Officer Geoffrey Brown, Flight Sergeant Lindsay Giddings and John Miller, along with the British Airman Flight Sergeant Norman Hainsworth and Sergeants Roy Oxborough and Turnbull. Ardis, Brown, Giddings and Hainsworth were all killed in the crash, while Oxborough died in hospital the following day. Only Turnbull and Miller survived. Ardis was buried at the Calais Canadian War Cemetery under the inscription, "His duty nobly done, ever remembered." He was only 28 years old. Flight Sergeant David Ardis's name is listed in the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. But this is one story of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here in the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant David Corry Ardis, who gave his life for us, for our freedom, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are young grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the lows scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We'd like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.